issue, and we got no response. So we're not sure what to do. And so I thought we'd reach out to you all to express our concern, our frustration. If there's two things, and we defer to you, but if there's two things we'd be looking for, one is some form of accountability or review or something like, well, what's happened over the last decade? It seems like a fairly minor situation. Unfortunately, it seems to, for lack of a better term, spun out of control a little bit, and it's starting to be a bit obnoxious and upsetting. So I think one is a look at accountability, and we developed a draft letter that if the board could share with Parks or something, asking to look into it. Item 2 would be a solution. We're not demanding a fix tomorrow, but let's look and see what we can do. So I appreciate the time. I'm open for Q&A.
Yeah, I appreciate your pun. And Lauren McGuire is here, can maybe give a little bit of background on where some of the miscommunication may have come from.
Thanks, Paul. So Healy Heights play area, we do recognize, and we know it needs renovation and replacement, as you know, which a lot of our parks play pieces do. We have them throughout the city that need repair and renovation. And you've probably heard us talk about our $450 million of major maintenance backlog. As far as the many replacement projects that we've identified, for our major maintenance list, we rank those based on equity, likelihood of failure, and consequence of failure. And then we rank those in order of priority and take the money that we get, which is minimal. For a park system of our size, we should be having $15 million, $20 million of maintenance per year. And we have major maintenance that's $3 million. And we actually were asked to take a 5% cut of that this year. So we know we have hundreds of millions of dollars in major maintenance needs. And we try to approach those as we can, looking at all the other facilities that are in the area, what kind of services we have, what kind of needs we have across the system. As far as why the fence is up at Healy Heights, still, I will talk to Nathan Hobbs and Don Athey, who are our playground specialists, about that. And I will get back to you and get you more information on that itself. Also, we have what we have done this year is we have identified a $200,000 pot of money from our major maintenance to try and target just play piece replacement throughout the system. So we're going to be doing that this year. It's actually a project dedicated just to replacing play pieces all over the place. And we're hoping with our new levy dollars that we'll have additional funding and additional staff to try and address many of these issues. So Tom, I appreciate your comments. I totally hear you. We have lots of issues, and Healy Heights is not an unusual one, sadly.
Well, I appreciate that, Lauren. And I think my advocacy today and on behalf of the neighborhood is almost less about, it's not knocking parks and saying, hey, why aren't you doing this? We understand where we sit within the system, and we fully understand it. I mean, I've spent the last 25 years of my career in public work, so I understand it. I think it's, one is the accountability issue that really is, I think, bugging us is, how a little bit of the runaround from parks, and that maybe for lack of a better term. And so I think we'd like to shed some light on that. And maybe that's your inquiry into Nathan and Dawn that might help, but we'd love a little better understanding of what was going on. And then obviously try to look for what's a fix. And I would say if there's an immediate action, just getting the fence down. I mean, it's become a hazard in the neighborhood, and it's not, it is a hazard. It's not preventing a hazard of them going onto the concrete. And so if we could get that removed, that would be great. And I'd offer this up too. I mean, I think, if there is a potential solution to accelerate, we'd love to hear for it. If there's things that the neighborhood needs to be doing, writing letters, advocating, we want to do this in lockstep with parks and support people as much as we can. So, if anything today is just a reach out, somewhat of a cry for help. I'm sorry for that. But also just to start the relationship as we move it forward, because we do underneath our committee at the board level, we have a parks committee that we just created, a subcommittee, and creating those liaisons with parks would be, just phenomenal to kind of keep growing that to see kind of how we move forward. I will say one more plug. Our new park supervisor, Seth, I believe it's Menzer is his last name. He's great. He's just been 100% transparent. He's been totally engaged. He's helped with moles. The landscaping looks great. I mean, he's phenomenal. He has recognized his hands are tied a bit on the equipment, but his level of engagement with the neighborhood has been phenomenal. So I can't pass on kudos enough for Seth.
Thanks, Tom, for sharing both of those perspectives, and we'll take that to heart. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, all. I'll follow up. I'm assuming Paul or whomever on next steps, so I can give you my contact info.
Tom, if you could send it to Paul and then I'll get it or to me.
Okay.
At McGuire@portlandoregon.gov. That would be great. And then I'll follow up with you. Okay.
Good. All right. Thank you, board. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All righty. So changing gears a little bit into a call to order and socializing. So I was going to change it up a little bit this time, similar to our previous conversation. We're all sort of looking for distractions a little bit. And so one of our latest guilty pleasures has been Ted Lasso on Apple TV. It's sort of this funny, sweet, sometimes poignant program. So I was going to ask everybody what their latest short version of their distraction might be. And let's go to Mike.
Oh boy, I get no chance to think about this. I would say testing out different pizza dough recipes. I know the baking thing's become a little passe, but we're still messing around with all these different pizza doughs and trying to perfect it. And basically my biggest contribution is getting it in and out of the oven, but that's been kind of a work in process for us.
Great. Thank you. Casey. You're muted. You're still muted.
Sorry, Cornell bird song identification classes, and I'm totally lost.
Aha. Thank you. Ian.
This is a bad thing to admit early in the morning, but I'm watching and have now subscribed to YouTube channels to learn how to mix cocktails. So I really like bourbon. So there you go.
Yes.
So everybody, if you would speak a little bit quieter today.
Very well. We'll try to do that. Patty.
Well, I'm venturing out of my cocoon and to walk a little bit in the neighborhood, and it's awfully good to get out again and see what's going on.
Wonderful. David.
I'm personally distracting myself with a home remodel project. I'm trying to liquidate my wife's kiln and fused glass collection that used to occupy our garage, and I'm going to turn it into my bike studio.
Oh, nice. Well done. Bonnie.
So at the beginning of quarantine, I dusted off a very dusty sewing machine to make a few masks and did a horrible job. My workmanship was awful. But I revisited it around Thanksgiving and started making some holiday themed masks for a few family members and friends. And since then I really got into it, and now I've made a couple hundred masks that I give around the neighborhood and donate to different places. So I'm working through scraps that I had for many years, maybe a decade or more, some of them, and some neighbors have given me some of their scraps as well. So
what a good citizen. Thank you. Alejandro.
Good morning. To get distracted, I've rediscovered the joys of trail running. So very slowly and a very amateur level, I'm back out in parks and trails, getting some fresh air and some mental breaks.
Wonderful. Lorena.
Hi, good morning. I really enjoy gardening, and now in the winter, I'm getting more into indoor planting, replanting, planting then. Yeah.
Good choice. Erin.
Oh, I've been thinking. I don't have a lot of spare time with 2 little kids and everyone at home, but I do, like Alejandro, I haven't been trail running, but just running. That's really what I do for myself, is get out there and run 3 times a week. So
Thank you. Randy.
I live on the same block as Crema, the coffee shop, and they make a very amazing chocolate bouchon that is very hard to resist having one each day.
I would be drawn in by that very, very readily. Tamara.
I've been an indoor gal lately, so video games has been my go-to distraction.
Got it. Alejandra.
Morning, everyone. I've just kind of been leaning into my creative side. So I've been doing some clay work and some watercolor painting, and it's been nice and therapeutic.
Wonderful. Katie.
Good morning, everyone. So naturally, I take my dog on walks and parks and various places, but my daughter has moved up from California with me for now, and we've invested in a Peloton. And for a person like me, I'm learning how to put shoes on and off and riding this bike that I'd rather be outdoors riding, but I don't seem to do that, but I'll do it on this Peloton, and it's really a trip. So I'm kind of enjoying it, but and it really does distract me. So I'm good with that.
Wonderful. All right. I don't see Pune. I think I've covered everyone from the board, and only because of time, I'm not going to staff, but thanks for checking in. That was fun to hear. All right. So we have the minutes that Brooke circulated. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
So move.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor of the January minutes? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Now we'll move to Adina and the director's report.
Great. Thank you, Paul. I trust everyone received the written report, and I hope you had some time to review it. And if you haven't, I hope that you make some time. It's, as usual, very robust. We do it's difficult paring it down every month, but I hope you do take the time to read that. I'm just going to highlight a few items. I wanted to talk a little bit about Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. We've been having in mid-January, we held our second round of employee gatherings for staff to learn about the results of our last employee survey and to learn more about the areas that stood out as the highest interest areas for improvement. The employee survey was open from October through December of 2019. Review and analysis was done in early 2020. And as with many things, the global health emergency redirected our efforts. So the follow-up on the employee survey was delayed until now. The survey confirmed that staff have a strong interest in the Bureau expanding trainings and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We used the employee gathering to share the work the Bureau has been doing as a result of the survey feedback, and asked staff in breakout sessions to share more information about the trainings that they're interested in. We're looking forward to our next employee gatherings to review the equity work, the racial equity lens, and equity statement that will be presented to staff in early March, and at our fourth gathering where we'll begin to discuss our mission and vision. I just want to remind the board that we will be back with you in March to almost have a mirror conversation as we're having with staff. I know that there's a lot of interest around the shelter to housing continuum. I wanted to let you know that our Bureau of Planning staff continue to work with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability on these potential code revisions. The current proposal would allow the temporary siting of shelters that are managed by a sanctioned operator in parks and open space, including community centers, developed parks, and natural areas for up to 180 days per calendar year without an emergency declaration by council. The proposal does not allow camping by individuals in any parks managed property. Just want to make that distinction. The temporary shelters could, in essence, function for up to 360 days if the 180-day provision per calendar year falls back to back with the subsequent year. So for instance, a sanctioned operator could apply for a permit to run a shelter from July to December, 180 days, and then again, January to June, 180 days. Portland Parks and Recreation could set terms for a shelter through a non-park use permit, but ultimately the determination for allowing temporary shelters in the open space zones would fall to the Parks Commissioner. Bureau and Planning Sustainability staff have shown that every Portland neighborhood has sites available for shelter use without using open spaced zoned property. That was a request that was made by one of the BPS, I'm sorry, one of the Planning and Sustainability Commissioners. So that's an interesting item to note. So we continue to work with BPS and Commissioner Rubio's office to add language that would further protect parks from proposed shelters, especially any outdoor shelters that might get proposed. And as usual, we'll continue to share updates as they are made available. I wanted to share with the board, because there's been a lot of conversation around livability issues in Portland. We are endeavoring on a graffiti abatement pilot project. It started on yesterday, on Monday. So staff from land stewardship and our maintenance services teams are providing feedback on the graffiti abatement work performed by the Bureau. The first step in the process is we're actually conducting a 2-week pilot study to get a more accurate snapshot of the graffiti related work that's done by our staff. So as I mentioned, it started yesterday and it will go through the end of the day on Sunday, the 21st. Staff will be capturing the park site, location and asset, the type of work performed, such as washing or wiping, power washing, sanding, painting, or other work. The size of the graffiti, just categorized by small, medium, or large, and a photo of the graffiti before it's removed, what supplies were used, and the time that was spent on the work. All of this work will be captured in our work order tracking system. And then the results of the graffiti pilot study will help us in justifying funding and prioritizing this work moving forward. Tanya Booker had guesstimated that her staff was spending approximately 25% of their time addressing graffiti. I want to thank Tanya and Lauren and Maximo for their team's work on the project. Moving along to capital project selection, the fiscal year 21-22 capital growth proposed projects for SDC funding that were identified have been approved by Commissioner Rubio. So she will be announcing these soon, and we look forward to sharing that news when it's available. And I want to thank Lauren and Sarah Huggins for their work on this. Speaking of Sarah Huggins, I'd like to pass the mic to Todd to make an announcement about the new role Sarah will be holding.
Morning, everybody. Just wanted to share with you, after a competitive recruitment for the Sustainable Future Program Manager, Sarah Huggins has been selected. Her first day was this past Thursday, February 4th, and she'll be transitioning from her current role as the System Development Charge Program Manager while we go out and conduct a recruitment for that position. So just share, I see lots of thumbs up and celebrations in the chat. Just share a little bit about Sarah. So she started working for Parks in 2007 as part of the capital projects team, assisting with construction projects. And then in 2009, she joined the planning team. She worked on the capital improvement program, the asset management plan, developed the parks level of service, the ADA transition plan, and then many master plans for different neighborhood parks. And for the past 5 years, she's been working as our System Development Charge Program Manager, and most recently was instrumental as part of our team on the Sustainable Future work, which resulted in the Portland voters approving the 5-year levy. So she's been an essential member of our team for over a decade now, and really excited for this position for her. And she will be supervising the levy coordinator, which is out for recruitment now, and interviews are starting this week. And Sarah is on, so she can say hello and make sure everyone gets to greet her.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you, and thanks for the introduction, Todd. I just want to say I'm really excited about this new opportunity. It was work I was able to just start to dip my toe into, gearing up for last November's work session, and then sort of pivoting hard and running fast to get a levy in front of voters for consideration. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to dive in more deeply and continue this work and this conversation.
Well, congratulations, Sarah. It's well deserved, and happy to have you leading the charge on that.
Thank you.
And we'll have Sarah at the Finance Subcommittee, I think, next month to talk about next steps for a sustainable future. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Todd. And again, congratulations, Sarah. So happy to have you join us in your new role. And unless anybody has any questions regarding my report, I would pass it back to Paul.
Thanks, Adina. Okay, that brings us to the working groups. And Tamara, we're eager to hear the report from the Community Development Group.
Yeah, I was just like eager. What are we gonna have? We do have a proposal draft, and I just wanted to say a special thank you to Katie and Casey and Alejandro for providing really thorough feedback and comments on it. So we have something set, but I would like to send it off to the staff who joined us, Tim and Kenya, at our meeting, and make sure that I'm also capturing their thoughts as well. And then kind of going from there, I'm hopeful that maybe by our next board meeting, depending on what leadership has in terms of, concerns or questions, that we'll have something for us to look at together. But that's where it's at. I'm really excited about the proposal. I felt like, everyone who was at the meeting, who was a part of the conversation, had their voices heard, and we were able to work on something together, and that felt really powerful. So yeah, that's where it's at.
Thanks for that report, Tamara. That's good news. All right. Financial sustainability, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So in our last working group meeting, Chris Hilke, who's the Bureau's asset management program manager, gave us an overview of Parks Asset Management Framework. He gave us some really good background on the assessment process. Interestingly, one thing we learned is that there's really no U.S. Parks and Recreation standards for assessment and for asset management. So Parks has really been looking at some of the standards in Australia and sort of adapting them for their circumstances. As part of this assessment process, what they're doing is they're targeting doing assessments on each of their asset classes every 5 years, but they're not really quite there yet. Some of the asset classes haven't been assessed yet at all. In terms of where Parks is now, the Bureau, as we all know and has come up on this call, has a significant deferred maintenance backlog of around $500 million. This is the largest backlog of deferred needs as a proportion of the size of overall infrastructure of all the bureaus in the city. And then, as we also know, the current investment levels aren't close enough to sufficient to keep the asset portfolio maintained even where they are now. So there's actually a really good graph in Adina's last monthly report that shows the declining trend in the asset portfolio. Chris did show us one funding scenario for mitigating the shortfall over a 20-year period. Now, because of the ongoing investment shortfalls, with the modeling that he showed us, it requires about $1.2 billion bonds to be issued over a 20-year period to mitigate that shortfall. But this was really good background information as we think about financial sustainability from a long-term perspective. As it relates to the budget, the park's proposed budget for the fiscal year 21 to 22 budget cycle was submitted to council on the 29th. And the BAC did submit a letter of support that was included with that submission. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read the cover of Adina's cover memo that she shared with park staff, because it provided a really good summary of the decision packages developed for the budget, including how portions of the new levy revenues would be invested. I know that's something we've all been interested in. Overall, the proposed budget's for about $357 million, which includes $71 million of general fund discretionary support. It creates over 50 new full-time equivalent employees and saves approximately 69 FTEs and up to 1,850 summer seasonal and casual hires. We'll note that 31 of the new FTEs will be in organizational support roles. So this is intended to prepare for service expansion and to address existing potential points of critical failure. So this is some foundational stuff to kind of ramp up for the future. And also, as I touched on in our last meeting, City Council guidance was for a 5% reduction in the general fund allocation, which amounts to about $3.7 million, but Parks is requesting that that amount be offset with levy funds, which would save approximately 34 more full-time employees. In addition to the fiscal year 21-22 submission, there's also going to be a supplemental budget ordinance before City Council this month, which is intended to address some short-term levy-related critical path investments, which will be made using an interfund bridge loan until the levy proceeds are received. So together with the 21-22 budget submission and the supplemental budget, together they include up to, on the high end, about $29 million of spend, which is attributable to the levy. Now, there will be additional levy resources that are going to be appropriated as part of the fall bump. The exact amount of the available resources for the year isn't completely known, but largely because of economic factors, it's expected to be lower than the initial total projection, which was around $45 million. So it looks like the current revised estimate is for about $41 million that will be available in total for the year. So that's a little less that will be allocatable in the fall than what was hoped for. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mike. I think, the 20-year projection for addressing the deferred maintenance backlog is very sobering. So, and the rest of your report was excellent as well. Are there any questions? I think this is one to take a moment and pause and just make sure everybody takes this one in. Okay.
I just add that I think it's really important we have a perspective now on what it will take to begin to address that. Thank you, Mike. That's really helpful.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right then. Patty.
Thank you, Paul. The Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group met this morning early. We might, as you might remember, we have a sort of a standing agenda of a whole series of items. So I'll just comment on one, which was the main event this morning, which is the South Park Blocks Master Plan. There have been rumblings from citizens about, are we doing this right? And a lot of criticism about what might be going wrong with it all. I think it's a complicated issue, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding involved. Of immediate concern, there has been an application for national landmark status of the South Park blocks by the Downtown Association. And there was a hearing on that last night, which threw some more light on the whole topic. to cut the rambling arguments down to their essentials, I think there is concern that there may be a conflict between the constructing the green loop on the west side of the South Park blocks with the park blocks and the design of the park blocks themselves. That appears to be resolvable, and we had some very good briefing from Tate White of Parks on that whole topic. There is also concern about the number of trees and how long they last. The intention basically is succession planting. As the existing trees reach the end of their lives, we need to have youngsters coming up to take their place. And without getting into the technicalities of it, that's a source of a great deal of, let's say, misunderstanding of quite a complex situation. I think that the master plan is headed in a good place. We're getting towards some sort of resolution. We shall see what the status of the landmarks application is and what the effects of that will be. I don't think there's anything else to report from the working group at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. And I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying, that it is very complicated at some levels in terms of the geometry of the green loop and how it doesn't actually impact the park, but there is a perception that it does. And as we're all aware over the last several years, that perceptions, in some cases misinformation, can really distort conversations. And so that's part of what's going on here with the South Park blocks. Katie. You're muted, Katie. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So a number of people that I know and that are members of the Native American Community Advisory Board, as well as like the Alaskan Association, have real concerns about, first of all, this designated as a historical landmark in regards to first the fast track, not following certain procedures. And also I'll just give you a quick overview on some of the things about this. It feels like it's centering white settler colonial narratives. There's problems with the language used within the document. They're pointing out some non-factual narratives and pointing out where there has been erasure and misrepresentation, and pointing out where there has been harm not yet addressed regarding statutes from powerful elites, harm to the health of communities of color with the process of not seeking community engagement, looping back around to get in it in a way that is hurried and inauthentic, and are continually having to rectify, to stand against, in the trauma to be heard. So there are some real concerns about this, and so maybe Patty, I mean, if you would like to meet with some of the folks I know that, for example, Judy Bluehorse Skelton, she testified yesterday, and a number of my other colleagues. So there are some definite concerns about this, maybe moving a bit too fast and not getting, like Patty said, not getting all the information, and not hearing what the community is saying, especially about this particular place and ownership, original ownership of it, especially regarding the Alaskan folks that were brought to Portland and here. So I don't know, Patty, if we want to discuss this more, for especially with people that are more knowledgeable than I am. I in the loop with the information, and so anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So there is a big community of people, not big, but a community of colors that are not really behind this historical designation, just like that. So.
We can probably get together offline on this, and let's also engage Tate, because she really is the expert on this. She knows absolutely.
Yeah, Tate has been in the loop with in the conversation too.
Katie, I wanted to say thank you for bringing this to the board, and I look forward to joining with you and Judy Bluehorse Skelton and others and Patty to help clarify, some of these injustices that aren't being addressed, and just the issues that are important to you.
Right, and Cynthia Castro is aware of it, and also, so.
Great. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. That takes us to the process improvement ad hoc, and Bonnie.
Thanks, Paul. So I don't have anything new from last month at this time. As you know, the process improvement is working through different specific practice areas of the two bureaus, those being Parks and BES. The tree planting process was completed, and we sent out the final narrative to the entire board. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure where that stands. I don't know if Jen can give us an update on that, but in the context of where tree planting decision-making and operations resides. But again, at this point, we're waiting for other functional areas within the two bureaus to go through a process as well. At this point, I'm just waiting for staff to convene those efforts.
Bonnie, this is Adina. What I can provide information on is that BES is undergoing a full organizational restructure right now. And so some of our conversations have, I wouldn't say languished, but they are slow in coming. So, what we can do is, as soon as we have a way forward or something to report, I'll make sure that you're looped in so that you can report on it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to imply anything, No,
I understand.
Often these efforts do require some patience because there are, lots of demands on staff's time, and I understand that.
Yeah, I think in particular, right now it's BES is restructuring. They don't have a division manager for the program area that covers tree planting. So it's a lot has fallen on their deputy director in addition to their reorg. So we're continuing to push that boulder up the hill. So just wanted to let you know it's not completely stagnant.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. And then Alejandra is going to present on the affirmation of equity statement.
Hi, everyone. I'll be brief. There haven't been many developments since the last time I spoke about this. I think last time I mentioned that I had the opportunity to work collaboratively with Casey Mills and Tamara on Layden and producing 2 versions of the drafts. And I was recently able to send those over to Kenya. So next steps will happen when they receive some feedback. And then hopefully we're able to present sometime in like March or April. So we'll see when that happens. And that's all for now.
Thank you, Alejandra. Okay. We moved through that pretty quickly, and that brings us to Randy and the Portland Parks Foundation report.
Sorry, I was just struggling to find my power cord. Let's see, we have our small grants program. The deadline for the next round of applications is March 30th. These grants typically run around $2,000 to $2,500, and we give out 3 and 2 cycles, a spring cycle and a fall cycle. We're looking at possible expansion. I can't make any promises yet of that, but if you know organizations, the grant program's really designed to leverage small organizations with anything from website redesigns to specific projects, new programs. They've ranged across the board. We gave a grant to a small organization that was taking African immigrants on walks to sort of get them out of the house and experiencing parks, because parks was not a tradition in their culture, and to helping Watershed Council redo their grant and outreach program. So it's a little bit of money, but it can go a long ways, and frequently leverage other monies. So I encourage you, if you know an small organization that is got ripe for this. We're also like many larger foundations, our amounts of money are pretty small, but we also are looking at giving simply to operating, because I mean it's obviously been a very difficult time, and even within the small organizations, sometimes just giving them some money to keep doing what they're doing will be helpful. So we're widening it from being project-based in our own modest way. The second, so again, the deadline, we might move it up a little bit or move it forward to April, but most likely it'll stay at March 30th. And then we're just starting to really gear up for our May Friends and Allies Summit. If some of you attended our first Friends and Allies Summit, we did, it was quite successful. We had great participation. We paired it with a day of service in parks. So it was technical training. Morning was inspirational speaker. The afternoon was sort of technical training in everything from thinking about how to market your efforts to how to raise money. And then we paired it with a day of service, which is getting people actually out working in parks. And we that was maybe a little bit less of a success. We'd like to make it a better one. I think there were some really wonderful things that came out of it in terms of groups like the South Park Friends of South Park Blocks, working in East Portland with a group of folks on a park. And so, kind of cross-fertilization of groups is what we were really hoping for. And so we're going to continue to refine that. And that's also where we give out our Parks Heroes Award each year. So those nominations will, keep an eye on our newsletter, and we'll be doing a call for nominations there. And then we are actively incubating a festival idea. This is our 20th anniversary, and we wanted to, originally we were thinking about all kinds of sort of, gala kinds of things, and the times just really have reshaped our thinking about that. And given the state of our downtown, we've decided to focus on downtown and to develop, incubate an idea that is sort of inspired by the Spanish tradition of the paseo. It of course exists in many cultures of evening walks, night markets, midways, but to develop that along the South Park blocks. And if fully realized, it would actually extend from all the way from PNCA or Broadway Corridor, the Prosperous Project on the north end, all the way to PSU on the south end, and would be pop-up performances, opportunities for food carts, for marketplaces along those blocks to just really bring people, help bring people back downtown, and do it in the evening so that we begin to create a sense of safety and belonging, building on, for instance, the Portland Light Festival this weekend. As I understand it, I was out of town, was quite a success. It was just people just loved being downtown again with each other. And so we are aiming to do that in August. And we hired an event manager, really talented event manager, Connie Wan, who helped us with our bridge opening when we closed down Burnside. And so we're really excited to have her on board. And I'm working, one of my board members, Subha Ganeshan, is the city's creative laureate, and we're sort of incubating this together. And I'll report more on it next time when we will have further refinements on it. Working closely with PBOT and also with Bureau of Planning and of course Parks. You know, there's the route would be roughly the same route as the future Green Loop, so it'll help sort of reinforce that idea further. And everybody seems pretty excited about it so far. As vague as it sounds, it's conceptually feeling pretty strong, and there's lots of buy-in from the various city agencies and so far with the city commissioners that we've spoken to. So that's our report. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Randy. I think the notion of the Paseo is something we really need right now. And I think, you know, hopefully by August, people will feel much more comfortable in terms of the pandemic, and then certainly getting downtown and sort of rejuvenating downtown. This will be a big part of that. So that's really wonderful news. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just add that the Pop-Up Light Festival is on next weekend as well. If you missed it this last weekend, there are 57 exhibits scattered around. There are maps online. If you go to pdxwlf.org, you'll find maps that'll get you around.
Thanks, Patty. All righty. That brings us to that time of the year when we have to think about nominating committees. So, and Brooke, if you could post the schedule that you shared with the board, I think that'd be better than me trying to read from this directly to everyone.
I know that Brooke noted that she was having some internet problems.
Okay.
So I don't know if she has capacity to do that right now.
That's fine. I will just read.
I'll try to put it in the chat.
Thank you. So it is time to start thinking about nominations for the next calendar year for our board. So we apparently the schedule calls for Adina to meet with Commissioner Rubio this week, and then a committee that we need to put together starting next week. So we were led very ably last year by Tamara, and I'm not going to put Tamara on the spot, but I will have an offline conversation with Tamara to see if she is willing to lead for us next year, this coming year. And if not, we'll be looking for volunteers to help with that. And then we have a window from mid to late February till April 9th to accept applications. We have one position to fill. And then, you know, that process works its way through the spring, and then the new, oh, there we go. Wonderful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brooke.
Actually, I found it in the email.
Okay.
I just want to add that I think Erin was pretty instrumental as well in the nominating committee last round.
Yes, she was. Thank you for noting that. And so, yeah, so that's just the process. For those of us who've been on the board for a while, it's familiar. For those who are new, and we have a lot of new members this year, it's how you all got here. So I just wanted to run this by folks and see if there are any questions. You know, if Erin or Tamara want to speak to this at all, that would be great.
And I just want to add to that, sorry to keep interrupting you, Paul, but I wanted to just add that, you know, we welcome outreach and nominations from every member of the board. We, last time in particular, you know, a lot of us reached out to our individual networks And we were able to get a particularly strong pool of candidates. And we were so excited to be able to invite the people that we did invite this time to join the board. So please everybody be thinking about folks who love parks and you think would be great additions. So you don't have to be a member of the committee to contribute in that way.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. That's exactly right. And we really look for people who will bring a citywide perspective to parks. So that's really key. Someone who can not be in any particular silo, but can help us address all the many issues that we're addressing, as our meeting so far shows. That we've just got a lot of different considerations to help advise parks on. Okay, so there's no comment from Tamara or Aaron and no questions.
I'll just note that there's 4 reappointments and 1 appointment.
Yes, yes.
So it's less of a heavy lift as last year was.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so we do have time scheduled today to address the public comment procedures. So this is work that Aaron and others, Pat Frobes, have helped us with over time to get to this point of, today for the first time in a long time, we had some public comment, and largely that's due to the pandemic. But we did state an intention at our retreat last June to be more proactive in terms of engaging with communities. And, we haven't quite hit the mark that way. So what we have is a draft procedure we want to talk about today, and to just, have a good discussion in these breakout groups. I've asked Brooke to just randomly select different groups. As we break into the groups, we'll see if there'll be a volunteer in each group to be a note taker or sort of a reporter, and then we'll come back and talk as a whole group again and just see what themes emerge in the 2 different conversations. Bonnie, was there anything else that we wanted to cover in this?
No, but I think before we break into groups, Paul, I think it would be helpful if you just hit the high points of what the procedure identifies for what we're going to do on a quarterly basis, so that people have a basic understanding of what our current procedure, which again was just adopted in May, thanks to a lot of work by Pat and Aaron and others. I think that would be really helpful to set a baseline for so people know what we're trying to achieve.
Okay. We wanted to, as I'm recalling, have a quarterly focus through the year. And the particulars of that, I'm not remembering, but I know Aaron can remind me. Aaron.
Okay. Trying to make a coffee. I need a coffee. So I think the basic idea was to be a little bit more proactive with our solicitation of public comment, or not solicitation, but our receipt of public comment. So whereas, and then to have a process for when we do get public comment, what happens after that? Like what happens after? So what's the follow-up with the person that provided, or the group that provided public comment? So that's kind of what the procedure is attempting to address. Is I think the idea is that the board on this procedure is that the board would kind of set, I think in the past, not since I've been on the board, but the board had kind of work plan for the year. So set some topics that we as a board want to get public feedback on, and then, go to whatever the stakeholders that might be involved in the topic that we've selected, either whether it's for the year or quarterly, like Paul mentioned, and kind of line up, here's who we want to hear from as a board, right? So to engage the public more in some of the conversations on the topics that we're covering. And so this kind of sets a guide, some guidance around how to do that. And I think then the idea would be that other public comment that might just arise could kind of be funneled through the chair. But there's a process for review from the whole board as well. So anyway, that kind of gives a little bit of a background and idea around this. And some of that comes from just often the public comment. We haven't gotten public comment in a long time, but often it's been a little bit random and not exactly sure why they're coming to the board or what can, you know, what they're expecting when they come to the board with public comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. That teed it up really nicely. I'm just going to add a little bit to that. So this morning is really a good example. You know, we got word late yesterday that Tom Putman wanted to come and talk about this merry-go-round at Healy Heights Park. And, you know, it wasn't exactly clear, you know, what we can do about it as an advisory board. So the intention with going out proactively and identifying things that we want to hear about is to make it something that we can actually kind of steer the conversation a little bit rather than just always be reacting. And I think in large part, this is in response to some of the comment we took during the process of the off-road cycling master plan, where we had the advocates for the off-road cycling plan and people who were concerned about safety issues of sharing trails with cyclists and pedestrians, people coming to us and wanting us to resolve something, and it really isn't our position to resolve those things. So we felt like we were frustrated that we couldn't really give a really cogent response, and we felt like the people who came felt like that didn't really go anywhere. So this effort is to make it a more satisfying process for ourselves and for the community. And Aaron, is there anything else that you want to add to that from the conversations that went on with you and Pat and others?
No, that seems good. Yeah, I think maybe just for me, some clarity if we're going to go into breakout rooms, what the outcome should be from those breakout sessions. What specifically are we talking about regarding this?
Yeah, excellent. So I think what we want to do is sort of walk through this, see where people feel like we're on target, where it really hits the mark, where we might want to consider changing it. And if we get that far, to maybe even address some topics. You know, I think just out of this meeting, there's certainly, you know, in terms of issues related to Native Americans and how that population has been overlooked so much from, you know, the point of occupying lands that were, you know, occupied and managed from time immemorial. So I think those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see come out of this. And Bonnie, please add if you've got thoughts as well.
No, I think that's right. I think that, you know, we had framed it as an opportunity to potentially talk about topical areas. But I think Aaron is correct in that, you know, by necessity, you know, much of what sets our agenda is largely reactionary. And so, you know, developing a work plan has always been a little bit of a challenge, but it's something that, you know, we've advocated for not only the full board, but for each of the working groups as well. And I think it's something we should still continue to aspire to. You know, there will always be, I think, an aspect of our work that is reactionary because things come up, like, you know, a chain link fence around a, you know, piece of equipment that was removed from a neighborhood park. And our role will always be to respond to that as well. But I think in as much as we can develop a framework and work plan for what we see as priorities for our group and for each of the individual working groups within that larger group, I think it will be really helpful.
Okay, well, let's go to our breakout groups, and we're going to assign, let me just, we're going to have 20 minutes on this. I'm sorry, 15 minutes. I'm sorry, I was right the first time. 20 minutes, and then we'll come into our report. So I was misreading the agenda. So see you all in 20 minutes. as Brooke
Hi,
takes us
I
in.
am opening the room.
Great, thanks, Brooke.
that I can, thinking about it in that way. So
Okay.
Bonnie, I think you should report back, to be honest.
All right, I'll do my best to report back, but of course, folks chime in if I miss anything or mischaracterize anything. So go ahead, Paul. Or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first, and then we'll just see how it goes. So we had a pretty strong show of consensus that a calendar makes a lot of sense, and people like the notion of a published calendar. And the question is, who sees it? How do we get the word out? And especially because of the digital divide that's there, certainly right now in terms of education with remote learning, that there's a lot of people who don't have ready access to the internet. And so we want to make sure that we find a way to communicate with those people as well. So that's part of what we want to accomplish. And then Randy asked some really good questions about why would people want to do this? And, there's only so much we can do as a volunteer group. So what are we really talking about? So what that comes down to is we want to work in parallel, in tandem, really, with parks. We don't want to be a separate effort, kind of doing its own thing. We want to be well coordinated in our outreach. And that's something that, remains to be determined. And as Katie shared, we're representing the community as a whole. And we're really wanting to work in partnership with these different community groups to advance parks provision and programming for the entire community. So we really need to understand better who it is that is out there, and how do we help them with either access to parks or programs. There's also the opportunities for people to join park staff to make Portland Parks and Recreation staff look more like the community. Let's see. So the big question that we didn't answer in our time together was, what's the value proposition here? What are we really accomplishing? What's the added value that comes out of these efforts? And it seemed that the consensus was that this is a really good intention and there's a need, but we don't want to duplicate or be at any kind of a cross purpose with what park staff is doing. So that needs to be given some good thought and consideration. But that doesn't mean that we can't publish this calendar and make this a working part of our board. So I'll leave it there and leave it to Bonnie and Aaron to represent the other group.
Yeah, so we had a really great discussion as well, I thought. We ended up focusing less on specific topical areas. Well, not at all, really. But we talked about different approaches. Tamara mentioned she had an interesting suggestion, which was to turn the entire thing around a little bit, and maybe one meeting a year, have a meeting dedicated purely to public comment, and then revisit the notes from that meeting, like we do revisit the notes from our annual retreat, to see how we're addressing areas of concern that we heard from different community members. So we talked about that a little bit. We talked about potentially doing a quarterly focus, maybe focused on each of the areas of emphasis, focused on each of the working groups, perhaps. That might be a way to sort of target each of the types of comments. You know, Aaron also pointed out that, you know, a lot of the public comment that we receive is actually stuff that really just needs to get directed to a specific staff person on the Bureau. And, you know, this morning seemed like a good example. You know, Tom and the community had this issue, and for whatever reason, staff felt like their hands were tied, and it was a matter of Lauren going, well, let me look into why this is. And, you know, I don't know what the bottom line is going to be on that. None of us do, obviously, but it seems like it could have been, you know, when the public comment came in, you know, we certainly could have said, well, this seems like it should just go to Lauren's, you know, Lauren's group and have her take care of it. I mean, was there really a reason other than us sympathizing with Tom and his community struggles? And it looks like Adina is commenting in on what could happen there. You know, we talked a little bit about, well, we talked a lot about the importance of revisiting and tracking issues that come up, because, and Paul, you noted this as well, is that often things get brought to us and we say, thank you for bringing it to us, and then we move on with our agenda, and which is pretty unsatisfying, both for the person providing public comment as well as for us. And we wanted to ensure that doesn't happen, regardless of what form the public comment takes. And again, you know, we wanted to hear specifically from, we were lucky enough to have Tanya and Maximo in our group, because Vincente mentioned, you know, there's a lot of people, like I said, don't know that the Parks Board exists, who aren't in a position to provide public comment at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, especially when that public comment is expected to be in person, or who don't have, you know, you mentioned the digital divide, Paul, who don't have access to the means to provide that public comment. And we talked about the importance of staff ensuring that, you know, they're the conduit, the ones that are the field staff who are on the ground, you know, maintenance staff who are so important, recreation staff when we have recreation programs, that they feel empowered to elevate when they need to, rather than say, oh, that's not my job, I can't do that, I don't have the power to XYZ. So those are all things that we talked about. Did I miss anything, folks, on my group?
I think, Bonnie, you also talked about possibly the working groups could be kind of a setting for if we're exploring topical areas for generating ideas for where public comment could come from.
Yeah, so, you know, just to put a little bit more work on that in the working groups, or like I said, use the working groups as the quarterly focuses would be one way to approach it as well.
Can I add something real quick?
Please.
This is just, I did pitch an idea, but I just wanted to get to the root of that idea or the intention behind it. I feel like the biggest hardship that we faced with public comment is just that folks honestly don't probably know we exist as an entity that can take public comment. We also had trouble searching for the public comment form on our own website. So I think the reason I was like, oh, maybe we could have a space dedicated to it is really something. I feel like we need something to lay a foundation for us reaching out to the community intentionally. So this would take energy and work, but we'd be like, okay, it's one day. We just need to do this one day. Just to be able to say like, hi, we're the Portland Parks Advisory Board, and this is what we do. And hopefully that would branch out in some way and it could shift, it can morph. But I think that just having a way to say, here we are, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, and try to really reach out to folks we haven't been hearing from. There's a lot of people we're missing, and I think we know that. But I don't think it's going to come from just like organizing our schedule better. Like that would help for sure. But I think, yeah, trying to really take that time would be good.
Thank you, Tamara. I really like the notion, and sorry to go to problem solving, but I love the idea of one day, one meeting that's dedicated. And of course, we know that there'll be people who have an obligation and they can't come to that. So I'm thinking that maybe some sort of a hybrid where maybe on a quarterly basis, we devote half of our board meetings. So we still get, we end up with four hours of the year devoted to public comment, as opposed to now it's sort of random, a few minutes here and there. And that way, hopefully less conflict with people's schedule. That the one day that we set it up that somebody had to take their kid to the dentist or something like that. Anyway, that's just a thought, but I do like the idea of a dedicated opportunity to listen to the community and to make people aware and do some outreach on a regular basis. That sounds really good. I want to hear from others in terms of, is this starting to sound like we've got a consensus here? Are there concerns that we're overlooking something important? It's a good conversation. I just want to make sure we're not stepping over anything. How about Alejandro? What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I very much agree with everyone's thought of how necessary this is. I share some of the concerns that Tamara expressed about making sure that we're able to kind of like accurately and effectively present what are the objectives of searching for or for reaching out and try to get public comments, and what are the expectations that the general public should have when dealing with the board. I think that would be my main focus as of at this point on how we sort of like set up the infrastructure or the processes to facilitate these public comments, and also and echoing what Bonnie was saying, the idea of facilitating it, the same process, or providing support for the park staff who are actually on the field and receiving most of this input.
Thank you. Lorena, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I was talking in the group about tracking the comments. I think it's because as I mentioned, the breakout room, a lot of comments from like maybe 2 years ago have been addressed. So even maybe as a board, we can do some exercise, just look into some meetings, minutes, and look into past comments and see, just to think about how the public policies, like it's a slow process. So people are gonna comment one day here and might not be able to address in the same day, on the same week, on the same month, but just being aware of that and how, what is this comment about? It's about like safety, it's about accessibility, and thinking how to introduce the public perspective into urban planning.
Thank you. David, how about you?
I think we're headed in the right direction. I think it's going to take, strategically, I think we've got it. Now it's going to be the tactical and logistics to make it happen. But I think we're proceeding in the right direction.
Thank you. Yeah, tactics are important.
Yeah.
So, and Randy, I want to come back to you in terms of the value proposition. So, not to put you on the spot, but I will, because I know you're good on your thinking on your toes. How do you think we can make a reasonable value proposition here? I mean, it seems like, just hearing what Lorena was sharing in terms of, topics like safety and accessibility, I think if we narrow the scope so it's not completely wide open, that could be helpful in terms of supporting staff. And I don't know, that's my first take on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard because I feel like there's I guess a sense that a potential duplication, but then also, is there some forum, reasonable forum for people who are unhappy or have policy initiatives that they would like to see that that don't exist. I'm just trying to figure out what the lane is, I mean, other than, people coming and complaining, when they don't get satisfaction. But also, is there a filter, for that, in which, important dissatisfaction is getting, voiced through us as an advisory group. That seems to be, something that doesn't really quite exist. So I don't know if we could somehow formulate that. In terms of thinking about broad-based, I mean, I think it's, as Katie in our group, I think pointed out, we, as individuals, we know our places, and it would be great to hear, from, Judy Blue Horse Skelton about her work. It would be great to hear from any number of groups, Brown Folks Fishing, or Columbia Watershed Council, to just to understand the the spectrum of things that are going out there that are maybe individually seen by park staffers and by some administrators, but otherwise never trickle up to us unless there's a complaint. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but I feel like there's something there between educating ourselves and being effective advocates for these organizations and interest groups, and being a meaningful sounding board for people who have real grievances. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does, Randy. And I think we've made some really good progress today. And I'm thinking that we need to go a little bit deeper on this. And I'm thinking that we might want to, keep the same committee group working for another month or so to kind of refine this, or ask additional people to join. But I think there's a lot of good material here, and we need to shape it a little bit more. I think it's going to David's point about tactics. We all agree that the strategy is good. And, I think there, as you were pointing out, Randy, there does need to be a filter, because this could be, sort of the old saying of be careful what you ask for. We could be inundated on one level, which would be not productive. I think what we want is to focus this, and we want to drive it. We certainly want to hear from the community, but it's the board reaching out to the community rather than just like opening up all the doors and windows and letting everybody jump in, because we just don't have the bandwidth for that. So that's the tension that we need to clarify and sort out in a way that works, that's meaningful, but just doesn't overwhelm us. So that's the task that I see for just the next level of refinement on this, which I think we have a great start. I want to make sure that other folks have an opportunity to add to this conversation while we have some time. And if we don't have more, we can do it offline, but just, we've got the benefit of a little extra time today for whatever reason.
I think Patty has his physical hand up.
Oh, sorry.
I do.
Go ahead.
We're really following on from what you were saying, what Randy was saying, and initiating in what Katie was saying. Maybe what we need to do is to use our initiative in knowing what topics we're dealing with, and to go out and solicit groups that would have an interest in that, So for example, this morning we were talking at length in our work group on the South Park blocks, and the Native American groups who are concerned for the reasons that Katie elicited are an obvious body of opinion and wisdom that we should tap into. So maybe we can take the same sort of initiative with other topics as they come up, and between us identify who is the best group to go and talk to, so that we get by this business about whether or not people know that we exist or whether the time is convenient. We can contact them offline and say, here's what we're talking about. Do you have a position? Is there something you can contribute to this discussion?
Thank you, Patty. Is there other comment? So if there isn't further comment, what I'd like to suggest, Aaron, if you're willing and have the bandwidth, is to work with whoever would like to volunteer today over the next month to clarify some of our priorities, and then think about, as Randy put it, what is the lane that we're trying to drive in? And I think that, that requires some coordination with park staff to make sure that we are staying in our lane. And, but I think just that kind of refinement could be really helpful. I'm very excited about taking this forward. So Aaron, I see you nodding. I just want to make sure I'm interpreting your body English appropriately.
That's fine. Yeah, but I'd love to have a, someone to join me in the work, or at least one or two.
Okay. So who amongst us today is?
Katie.
Great, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Casey.
Happy to help. Yeah, I'm happy to help. Aaron.
Okay.
Terrific.
Great. I'll just connect with both of you guys offline about scheduling a time. Thank you.
And I just put in the chat, I'd like to sign a manager to participate.
Great.
I think that will be helpful.
All right. That
Yeah,
sounds
and
really,
I said I would help, but if it's not necessary, that's fine too. I'm flexible.
I think the more the merrier, Bonnie. So good for you. Thank you. Okay, great. Well, I felt like that was a good conversation, and thanks everyone for contributing to it. All right, so do we have any topics for next month's agenda that people would like to propose today? We've had this item on our agenda. I don't think we've had any takers yet, so we may reconsider this as a topic, but. All right, well, you're certainly free to contact Bonnie or myself or Brooke or Adina over the next couple of weeks before we meet to draft our agenda. So please give it some thought. I don't have any other further comments today, so we're going to get out 10 minutes early. So thanks, everyone. And Adina, do you have anything else to add today?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a reminder that next month we will be reporting back on Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland.
Right. Bonnie, anything else from you? Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in a month.
Thanks, everyone.